Hey everyone, welcome back to the Incredible India podcast series. I am your host, Sam, and sitting across from me is our resident expert, Taylor.
Hey there. Ready to dive in?
Absolutely. So I want you, the listener, to picture the year 1498 for a second.
Oh, wow. Taking us way back.
Right. Just cast your mind back to your middle school history textbook. You probably remember a very, specific, grand narrative.
The whole Age of Discovery thing.
Exactly. The story goes that Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama bravely sailed his fleet around the perilous Cape of Good Hope, crossed the vast Indian Ocean, and single-handedly discovered India.
Yeah, discovered.
Yeah.
It is arguably one of the most enduring foundational myths of Western historical education.
It really is.
I mean, it paints this picture of the East just sitting in the dark, isolated, stagnant, just waiting for a European ship to arrive and connect them to the wider world.
Yeah, like they were just hanging out waiting for Europe to show up. But in this deep dive, we are taking our sources today, which are provided by 5 census tours, to completely dismantle that myth. We are diving into a piece of evidence that shatters the 1498 narrative so thoroughly, it makes the whole concept of a European discovery look, well, ridiculous.
Yeah, it really does.
And that document is called the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea.
Which is just an extraordinary survival from antiquity. It's a manuscript written around 60 CE.
60 CE! Yeah.
Right, by an anonymous Greek-speaking author who was living in Roman Egypt. So just to put that in perspective, that puts it roughly 1,440 years before Vasco da Gama ever hoisted a sail.
That is wild.
It is, and it provides undeniable granular proof that India was the bustling cosmopolitan epicenter of a highly sophisticated global economy, a millennium and a half before the Age of Discovery.
So to everyone listening right now, buckle up, because this deep dive is going to totally change how you view ancient history, the mechanics of global trade, and honestly, the literal ground beneath modern Indian cities.
Oh, for sure.
Let's start with the manuscript itself, because when I first heard about a 2,000-year-old Greek document, I assumed it would be incredibly dense.
Oh, naturally.
Right. I pictured this dusty philosophical text written by some aristocrat who never actually left his library in Alexandria.
But the reality is entirely the opposite. The Periplus of the Erythraean Sea does not read like a dusty academic history book at all.
Not at all.
It is a highly practical, commercially detailed handbook. I mean, it is a survival and profit manual written by a merchant for other merchants and ship captains operating in the first century.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because reading through the translated source material, the level of specificity is just wild.
It really is.
It's less like a historical chronicle and more like a 2,000-year-old Yelp page.
Oh.
Or like a TripAdvisor review for ancient sailors.
That analogy actually fits perfectly. The author is not, waxing poetic about the sunset over the Indian Ocean.
No time for that.
Right. He is dispensing hard, actionable intelligence. He catalogs the exact conditions of various maritime routes, which specific ports are safe to approach, what the local political climate is like.
Even the major imports and exports at every single stop.
Exactly. He even tells you what local currencies are accepted and what exchange rates to expect when you get there.
And my favorite part, he also lists the specific gifts you need to bring to appease the local kings.
Oh, yeah. If
Like, make sure you bring fine wine and singing boys if you want to dock at this specific port.
It is purely functional. And what it documents is this massive interlocking network of ancient Indian trade routes.
Huge networks.
Yeah, these Indian ports were trading simultaneously with the Roman Empire, the Arabian Peninsula, China, Persia, and the east coast of Africa.
All at the same time.
All at once. The entire concept of India needing to be discovered by Europe is historically absurd when you realize the rest of the known world had been doing brisk business with them for over 1,000 years.
Wait, I'm stuck on something then. This is my biggest pushback to this whole idea.
Sure, what is it?
If the Periplus proves that the Romans, the Egyptians, the Arabs, and the Chinese were already trading heavily with India, what did Vasco da Gama actually do? Like, why did he get a whole chapter in my textbook?
Right, well, what Vasco da Gama discovered was not India. He discovered a sea route from Europe to a place the rest of the world already intimately knew.
Ah, okay.
Prior to 1498, European access to the Indian market was entirely blocked by the Ottoman Empire and Arab middlemen who, controlled the overland and Red Sea routes.
So they were just cut off.
Exactly. Da Gama simply found a back door by going all the way around the southern tip of Africa. When he finally arrived in Calicut, He didn't stumble onto some isolated unknown tribe.
Not at all.
No, he dropped anchor in a thriving cosmopolitan port city that was already the Wall Street of the international spice trade.
And he didn't even figure out how to cross the ocean by himself, did he? Because the sources say he relied heavily on Arab navigators.
He absolutely had to. Da Gama picked up a local pilot on the East African coast who guided the Portuguese fleet across the Indian Ocean.
Because they already knew the way.
Right, these local navigators have been sailing those exact ancient trade routes for centuries. They knew exactly where the Indian ports were, and more importantly, they knew exactly what the winds would do in every month of the year.
Wow.
So Da Gama's voyage was a massive economic breakthrough for Europe, certainly, but for India. Another foreign ship pulling into port was just completely unremarkable.
So Western history literally took a guy finding a new shortcut to the world's busiest market and framed it as him discovering the market itself.
Exactly. And it is not an isolated incident either.
What do you mean?
Well, if we look at the actual mechanics of how these ships were getting across the ocean, we run into another massive misconception. The Europeans weren't the only ones taking credit for Indian maritime knowledge.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Greeks pulled the exact same trick a millennia earlier.
Okay, let's talk about that. The navigation of the Indian Ocean itself. How were they actually crossing thousands of miles of open water in the first century?
What's fascinating here is how the Periplus deals with the monsoon winds. The text specifically credits a Greek merchant named Hippolus with discovering the direct sailing route.
Discovering, right.
Right, discovering the route from the Red Sea across the open ocean to the Indian Peninsula. The text claims Hippolus figured out how to use the monsoon winds around 47 BCE and therefore unlocked direct trade.
The sources, however, are very clear that Indian sailors had been using those exact same monsoon winds to cross the ocean for centuries before this Greek merchant supposedly figured it out.
Exactly.
But can you explain the mechanics here? How does a wind act as a reliable trade route? Because to me, wind seems too chaotic to build an entire economy on.
That's a great question. The monsoon winds over the Indian Ocean are entirely unique. Think of them as a massive natural conveyor belt that physically reverses direction based on the season.
Okay, a conveyor belt.
Right. During the summer months, from roughly June to September, the winds blow steadily from the southwest, meaning they push a ship perfectly from the coast of Africa or Arabia straight toward the west coast of India.
And then it flips.
Yes. Then, during the winter months, from November to February, the entire system flips. The winds blow from the northeast, pushing ships from India back toward the west.
So it's literally a guaranteed round-trip ticket. You ride the summer wind there, wait a few months, do your trading, and ride the winter wind back.
Precisely. And the Periplus inadvertently contradicts its own claim that the Greeks discovered this.
How so?
Well, the author notes the heavy presence of massive Indian vessels already operating far off the coasts of East Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. There were fully established Indian diaspora settlements on the island of Socotra, which is near modern-day Yemen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and you cannot establish a transoceanic trade network and permanent overseas settlements without deeply understanding the physics of the monsoon winds.
It's such an ironic pattern, isn't it? A Greek sailor learns how to ride the monsoon from local Indian navigators who have been doing it for hundreds of years, and suddenly it's recorded as the Hippolus discovery.
Yep, the classic narrative.
A Westerner learns what the locals already know, and it goes down in the Western historical record as a breakthrough.
Exactly.
But I have a mechanical question. Because in 60 CE, how on earth were they building ships large enough to survive a monsoon force open ocean crossing? European ships from that era would have been just battered to pieces, right?
They absolutely would have because of how they were built.
Right.
European shipbuilding relied on rigid hulls fastened with iron nails.
Right.
So when a rigid hull hits a massive monsoon swell, the rigidity becomes a huge liability. The wood just snaps under the pressure.
Ouch.
But Indian and Arab shipbuilders used a completely different technology-sewn boats. They stitched the wooden planks of the hull together using extremely strong coir ropes made from coconut fiber.
Wait, they sewed the ships together, like with needle and thread, well, giant thread.
Yes, and it was a brilliant feat of engineering. A stitched hull is flexible. It flexes and bends with the massive waves rather than resisting them and breaking.
That is genius.
It really is. The Indian merchants weren't just passively waiting on the beach. They were running massive shipyards, producing vessels technologically, perfectly adapted to the ocean they were dominating.
Okay, so we know how they were sailing these massive, flexible ships, riding the reversing monsoon winds. Let's look at where they were sailing to and what was actually happening when they arrived.
The ports.
Right, this brings us to the west coast of India, specifically the ancient ports of Bharuch and Muziris.
Let's start with Bharuch, which the Greek merchants referred to as Barygaza. It was located in modern-day Gujarat, right at the mouth of the Narmada River.
Okay.
And the historical timeline of this single port is just staggering.
Right.
Bharuch was an active, wealthy shipbuilding and trading center going all the way back to the era of the Egyptian pharaohs.
Not old.
Yeah, it was functioning as a global hub before the city of Rome was even founded.
That is insane. And the TripAdvisor aspect of the Periplus really shines when it describes Bharuch. The author warns incoming sailors about the incredibly dangerous currents and tidal bores at the mouth of the Narmada.
Which was a very, very real threat. A tidal bore is essentially a massive localized tsunami.
Terrifying.
Yeah, when the incoming ocean tide funnels into a narrow, shallow river mouth like the Narmada, it creates a literal wall of water that rushes upstream against the current.
Oh, my God.
If a merchant ship didn't know how to handle it, they would be destroyed before they even reached the docks.
The author actually specifically mentions that foreign captains shouldn't even try to navigate it alone. Local Indian pilots had to row out in smaller boats, meet the arriving foreign ships, and physically guide them through the bores and safely into the harbor.
Like an ancient harbor pilot.
Exactly. And once they docked, the manifest of goods was incredible. Ships were pulling in loaded with copper, tin, lead, glass, and most importantly, massive quantities of silver and gold.
And look at what they were leaving with. The hulls were packed with ivory, agate, and premium Indian textiles.
Right, the textiles.
The text highlights muslin and cotton goods manufactured inland in Ujjain, which was an ancient royal capital, and brought down to Bharuch for export.
Okay, I need some context on muslin, actually, because today we use it as like a cheap backing fabric. Why were the Romans trading actual gold for it?
Ancient Indian muslin was a marvel of textile engineering. It was hand-woven cotton, so incredibly fine, so sheer and lightweight, that the Romans referred to it as woven wind.
Woven wind, that's beautiful.
Roman patrician women were absolutely obsessed with it. It was the ultimate status symbol, a luxury good that the Roman Empire simply did not have the technology to replicate.
Wow. And as impressive as Bharuch was, the sources point to Muziris, further south on the Kerala coast, as the undisputed king of the ancient economy.
The spice capital.
Yes, Muziris was the epicenter of the global spice trade. There is an ancient Tamil poem from the Akananuru collection that paints an incredible picture of this.
What does it say?
It describes the beautiful, massive vessels of the foreigners stirring up the white foam on the Periyar River, and it says they were, quote, arriving with gold and departing with pepper.
That single line, arriving with gold, departing with pepper, is the absolute essence of ancient macroeconomics.
It really is.
I mean, the Roman Empire was utterly addicted to Indian black pepper. It wasn't just a seasoning. It was used in medicine, in religious rituals, and as a way to preserve meat.
But they had a problem, didn't they?
A massive economic problem. They wanted thousands of tons of pepper, muslin, and ivory from India, but Rome didn't produce anything that the Indian merchants actually wanted to buy.
Wait, the Indians didn't want Roman wine or olive oil? I thought that was their big thing.
Not in nearly the quantities required to offset the cost of all that pepper. Indian merchants demanded hard currency. They demanded bullion.
Ouch.
Yeah, this created a massive, continent-spanning economic crisis in Rome. Pliny the Elder, a very prominent Roman author and philosopher, writing around the exact same time the Periplus was written, complained bitterly about this in his texts.
He wasn't happy.
Not at all. He was essentially having a macroeconomic panic attack, arguing that the enormous outflow of Roman gold and silver to India was destabilizing the entire Roman economy.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Human behavior, especially economic behavior, never really changes.
It doesn't.
Pliny, complaining about Rome bleeding its gold reserves dry to buy Indian pepper, sounds identical to a modern politician complaining about a massive trade deficit because a country is, too addicted to importing foreign smartphones or luxury cars.
It's the exact same argument.
Rome was quite literally eating its own wealth just to spice its food.
The scale of the bullion drain was so severe that over time, the Roman Empire was forced to debase its own currency.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah. They started minting coins with less and less actual silver in them because all the pure silver was sitting in the vaults of local rulers in Kerala.
Just to handle that volume of physical wealth, the infrastructure at Muziris must have been massive.
By the standards of the 1st century, Muziris rivaled Alexandria or Antioch in commercial significance. Modern excavations at a site called Patinum, which is near modern Kochi, have unearthed the physical proof.
What did they find?
Archaeologists have dug up Mediterranean glass beads, massive Roman amphorae, which are those large, distinctively shaped clay jugs used for transporting wine and oil, and they even found a ring bearing the portrait of a Roman emperor.
Okay, so if the West Coast was bleeding Rome dry of gold in exchange for pepper, what was happening on the other side of the Indian Peninsula? Was the East Coast isolated from this economic boom?
Not at all. And the evidence from the East Coast Tamil Nadu and the Bay of Bengal reveals a completely different layer to this history.
How so?
It proves that these foreign merchants weren't just dropping anchor, trading their gold and sailing away. They were actually living in ancient India.
We have to look at Pumpuhar, which was also known as Kavarapatinam.
Located right at the mouth of the Kaveri River, right?
Yes. There was a great Tamil epic poem from the 1st century CE called the Silapatikaram. It describes Pumpuhar in vivid, bustling detail.
What does it look like? It paints a picture of an incredibly cosmopolitan hub. The markets were overflowing with luxury commodities, and the text specifically notes that you could hear multiple foreign languages being spoken in the port quarter at all hours of the day and night.
The epic specifically mentions the Yavanas living right alongside the local Tamil traders. And Yavana was the ancient Tamil word for Greeks and Romans, right?
Correct. But Pumpuhar isn't just a mythic city from a poem. The Periplus confirms it existed as a major commercial center.
It was a real place.
Very real.
Yeah.
And even more incredibly, marine archaeology has confirmed it. Over the centuries, the sea level rose and swallowed the city. But marine archaeologists using sonar and diving teams have actually located its submerged structures.
That's amazing.
Yeah, there are ancient wharves and building foundations sitting up to 70 meters underwater in the Bay of Bengal.
It's a sunken testament to an ancient, globalized world. But you don't even have to look underwater to find proof of Romans living in India.
No, you don't.
If you go just a bit further north to Arykamadu, on the outskirts of modern Puducherry, the evidence is literally right in the dirt. Archaeologists excavating there have found something called Roman Erythraean ware. Can you explain what that is and why finding it is such a big deal?
Absolutely. Erythraean ware was the premium, high-status tableware of the Roman world. It was produced in the city of Arezzo in modern-day Tuscany.
Fancy stuff.
Very fancy. It's a very distinctive, brilliant, red-glazed pottery, often stamped the maker's mark. It was essentially the fine china of antiquity. It wasn't something you shipped as a bulk trade good. It was the personal tableware of wealthy Roman citizens.
But finding it in the dirt in India means?
It means Roman merchants were physically residing in Arykamadu. They brought their fancy Tuscan dinner plates from home. They lived there. They ate off them while doing business with Tamil traders. And when the plates broke, they threw them in the local trash heap.
I want you, listening right now, to really absorb that. Imagine digging a garden in your backyard in South India today, and your shovel is a 2,000-year-old luxury dinner plate from Tuscany. It's mind-blowing. It completely shatters our modern preconceptions about ancient borders. We tend to think of globalization as a recent phenomenon, born in the era of the internet and massive steel container ships.
But Arykamadu proves that deep, sustained, physical globalization people from entirely different continents living in each other's cities existed in the centuries before the Common Era.
And it goes deeper than just the exchange of luxury plates and pepper, too. These ancient trade routes didn't just move physical commodities, they were the superhighways for exporting world-changing ideas.
Right.
Which brings us to the port of Tamraupli in present-day West Bengal.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, Tamraupli is perhaps one of the most consequential ports in human history, not for what it sold, but for what it launched.
Exactly.
It was the primary maritime gateway for the spread of Buddhism out of India.
The sources mention Emperor Ashoka using this port, right?
Yes. Around 250 BCE, Emperor Ashoka dispatched his famous Buddhist missionary expeditions. Historical texts record that his own son and daughter sailed from Tamraupli to Sri Lanka to introduce Buddhism there.
And it operated as a two-way intellectual street for centuries. In the 5th century CE, the famous Chinese pilgrim and scholar Fa Hen visited Tamarlipti.
He was there for quite a while.
Yeah, he spent years traveling across India studying Buddhist scriptures. When it was time to go home, he sailed back to China from Tamarlipti, carrying heavy loads of Buddhist texts and manuscripts.
And those are so important.
Crucial, those exact texts went on to fundamentally shape the development of Chinese Buddhism. The ancient Indian trade routes were literally exporting the intellectual and spiritual heritage of India across the entirety of Asia.
It's incredible to think about the sheer volume of cultural transmission that happened right there on those docks.
It really is. And yet so much of this physical history is hiding in plain sight, especially when we look at the modern Maharashtra coast.
Oh, this is fascinating.
This is the part of the deep dive that I just can't stop thinking about. The Periplus lists a whole string of active seaport towns on the western coast. It gives them these ancient Greek names: Sopara, Kalyana, Semula.
That sounds so exotic.
Right. Reading them, they sound like lost mythical cities swallowed by the jungle.
But they aren't lost at all. They just changed their names and kept growing.
Right.
Kalyana is modern Kalyan, a major satellite city of Mumbai. Samula is modern Chembur. Sopara is Nala Sopara.
They are literally Mumbai suburbs.
Yep.
Chembur is a densely populated modern neighborhood. There are massive traffic jams there right now. People are riding the Mumbai local commuter train lines every few minutes directly over the remains of ancient global ports.
It's surreal.
Just think about that contrast. You could be sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic in Chembur, honking your horn, completely unaware that a Greek merchant reviewed the docking facilities of the exact spot you're idling on 2,000 years ago.
It is the ultimate hidden heritage. You have the Ashoka rock edicts, you have the spectacular Kanheri caves with their ancient Buddhist monastic communities.
Which, by the way, were directly funded by the immense wealth generated by this coastal trade.
Exactly. And all of it is either buried beneath or completely surrounded by one of the most intensely developed, densely populated urban landscapes on Earth.
It's wild to think about.
The physical reality of modern India is sitting directly on top of the documentary evidence of the ancient global economy.
It really puts everything into perspective. I mean, we've traced an unbelievable journey in this deep dive today.
We really have.
We started with a Greek merchant's highly practical 60 CE handbook. We looked at the physics of the monsoon winds and the genius of flexible stitched ships.
The Somme boats.
We saw how the Roman Empire literally debased its own currency because it was bleeding gold to buy Kerala pepper at Muziris. We visualized Roman merchants eating off Tuscan pottery in Tamil Nadu.
Right in their backyards.
And we traced the path of Buddhist monks sailing out of West Bengal to change the spiritual landscape of Asia.
And every single piece of that evidence decisively proves that India was the beating heart of the global economy millennia before Vasco da Gama ever learned how to sail.
Millennia.
It's a profound paradigm shift. The East wasn't waiting to be discovered. It was already running the world's markets.
So what is the big takeaway here? What should you, our listener, be walking away with?
Well, this raises an important question, and it's something I want everyone listening to just mull over.
Okay, let's hear it.
If a single 2,000-year-old document, just a merchant's practical handbook, can so completely and effortlessly upend the famous age of discovery narrative that we were all taught as objective truth in school,
Yeah.
what other established historical facts are out there just waiting to be overturned?
Wow.
How much of what we accept as standard textbook history is just waiting for an ignored, untranslated, or forgotten piece of evidence to prove it entirely wrong?
That is a brilliant thought to leave off on. Keep questioning the textbooks, everyone. If you decide to travel to India, we have a recommendation. Five Senses Tours organizes tours across India, which are immersive cultural experiences. You can email contact@fivesensestours.com. Note 5 is written as a numeral in contact at fivesensestours.com or WhatsApp to +919 845 677 446.